Yo. I hope all you guys are doing well. I just wanted to talk for a little bit on the current state of PvP balance for the Arcanist on the PTS. I probably spent about 12-14 hours on the PTS testing things in duels, BGs, a little bit of Cyrodiil. So I'll go ahead and go over what I liked about the class, what I didn't like about the class, what I think they can change to maybe make it feel a bit better, and what is just absolutely broken. Now, full disclaimer, this is week 1. All of this is subject to change. I hope a lot of it does change, but it's got some issues. First, I'll go ahead and say, I really enjoyed playing the class. I will be playing it a lot when it comes out. I wish it is already out. The visuals, the audio for this class are just great. They did a really good job making the class look cool. It was genuinely fun to play, and that's very important. That's probably the most important part about this. So that's a big plus. And I'll also go and talk about the strengths of the class, because it does have some stuff going for it, despite all of the hate that it's gotten recently. In the class kit, it has access to a lot of major and minor buffs. It's got the defensive rune that auto heals you, gives you a bunch of buffs. The ground target gives you all the minor recovery buffs. It's pretty good for dueling or if you're a support. And the class stun is a very overloaded ability. It's got brittle, minor vulnerability, and it's undodgeable with a 15-meter range. The healing beam is absolutely broken. It was kind of funny to see people using that on BTS, because you'd have them just straight tanking entire battlegrounds, standing in the middle, not moving. It was kind of broken. That definitely needs to be looked at a little bit as far as balance goes, but trying to heal people with that is also really buggy. It's almost impossible to heal people with it, but healing yourself with it, it's absolutely broken. The overall survival of the class is pretty good if you build it right. One of the shields that it has can be absolutely massive. I'm talking like over 20k shields in PvP, and the defensive ultimate, that's a 100k shield. So it definitely has the defensive toolkit. I would say probably the main issue is the class skill damage. This was leading to most of the BTS builds being kind of the same thing, just being generally proc reliant instead of using class skills. Most people aren't even using Crux, the mechanic, to do damage at all. It was leading to a lot of Master Dual Wield, Vate Ice Staff, Way of Fire, Marsalok, Zon. If not a damage monster set, then they're running Roxa to try to cover up another one of the class's issues. This class kind of has sustain issues. The cost of a lot of the mag abilities, even some of the stam abilities, I'm talking about like the heal if you use the class heal, like the main one that generates Crux, can be very high. Especially high if you're a stage 3 vamp. This kind of encourages you to use cost reduction glyphs. It kind of feels like you need to use at least one. Another kind of major issue is Crux isn't really worth building. The burst of this class is locked behind Beam, and Beam is extremely inconsistent in PvP. If you can find a situation where you can beam someone for 2, 3, 4 seconds, which is, it's kind of rare. Even if you're on target and you're beaming them, they're not moving, you could just not get damage numbers. It's still pretty buggy. The alternative to beam for spending your Crux on damage would be the Tentacle Cone, but it's also really unforgiving in the size of the cone. And the Execute version of the skill, the scaling on the execute damage is very, very low. I think the maximum hit I got with it was maybe like 8,000 damage. The class spammable I thought was going to be much better than it was. I went ahead and went with a full crit build because the class has crit scaling passives. The spammable has a crit morph that gives it, major savagery, equivalent amount of crit, and I had about 124% crit damage. And the spammable, I think the max hit I was getting was about 6,000 total. So with very inconsistent class burst, low spammable damage, and really no impactful ultimate to use, like corrosive, a lot of the Arcanist fights would end up stalemating. Talking about ultimates also, the ultimates that it has access to, the costs are pretty high. And as far as the damage ultimate goes in PvP, it's very easy to just kite away from it. So I found myself gravitating more towards generic ultimates like Dawnbreaker, Sword and Ward, maybe even Bow Ult, Destro, because their reliability was much higher than trying to get people to stand still, kill them with the tracking ultimate beam. The ultimate bubble is still very high cost, but it's a very good defensive ultimate. There's just other options that are cheaper. And the portal, which was probably the most overhyped ability that Arcanist has, is kind of a buggy mess at the moment. It's in a state where it's basically unusable for PvP. There might be some niche uses for PvE, but it's just far too inconsistent to use as a mobility skill when you could just use something like Vampire Teleport or Race Against Time. Unfortunately, it's in a bad state. And some of the other concerns I have that aren't specific to Arcanist. For some reason, ZOS has a fixation with adding heals that scale with HP, and their newest one is Arcanist's main shield, which also scales with HP. This is unfortunately going to lead to a lot of Arcanists stacking HP, like Magsorks and Wardens on live. In my opinion, this is very unhealthy for the game to have everyone running around with 40 to 50,000 HP with 10 to 20,000 shields on top of that. It greatly reduces the value of burst damage and really promotes stalemating. And this problem is exacerbated by the fact that they're adding in the 50% damage reduction mythic legs that can actually be easily sustained by pretty much any mag class or someone that builds a little extra into sustain. So it's going to make people very tanky. From my experience in fighting people that were wearing the new mythic legs, it was almost impossible to kill them unless you're using very, very specific setups. But some of the potential changes I would love to see come from ZOS would be something like making the beam and tentacle more reliable in their hit registration. Trying to land this consistently can be very frustrating, especially when people have like triple swift or high latency. It's just a very unforgiving set of skills. Increasing the execute damage on the stamina morph of tentacle would also probably be good. You could raise it up to match something like Whirling Blades, which is also a AoE execute. Either give beam a heal component or make it unbashable. At the moment, it's very high risk for medium reward. I'd love to see Portal actually be brought to a usable state. It's a buggy mess at the moment, and maybe the range could be increased a little bit if it's going to have the cooldown that it currently does on the PTS. Increase the spammable damage by 15 to 20%. In all of my time playing the class, it was very underwhelming, especially when you compare it to something like Concealed Weapon or DK Whip. The only main benefit to using it is it generates Crux. Reduce the cost of the damage ultimate or make the tracking for it on the beam a little bit more aggressive. When you're using it against decent players, it's almost impossible to land because they'll just kite it out. The very inconsistent ultimate, maybe that wouldn't be so bad if it didn't cost, like 200 ultimate, but buffing some of the class passives too. A couple of them are basically useless, like the status effect one. Any combination of these changes would be absolutely welcome. And yeah, thank you for sticking around if you're still here. Subscribe if you liked it. See you.